Good evening, First Baptist Church of Jasper, Georgia. Glad that you are joining me and the rest of us for Wednesday night Bible study. This is the second week of dealing with the parables of Jesus. Tonight we're going to be looking at two parables grouped right together. These parables come from Matthew chapter 13, verses 44 through 46. These are these short ones right here. And these parables are also linked up. If you go back and just look at chapter 13, chapter 13 is pretty much full of parables. A parable or explaining the parable. So of the mustard seed, of the sower, the parable of the weeds among the wheat. And so this is the chapter completely pretty much geared toward parables. So here we go. And these parables are about finding things. So as you think about finding things, we often know what it's like to lose our keys, to lose our phone, to lose be separated from people. We know what it means to lose something. Sometimes to even lose something within ourselves that is scary and it's unsettling, whether it's on the inside or whether it's on the outside. And when we lose something, we often go in search of it. So here are these two parables that are back to back to one another. So I'm going to read them. I will read over them twice. Verse 44 through 46. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field, which someone found and hid. Then in his joy, he goes and sells all that he has, and he buys the field. I'm going to read that one again. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field, which someone found and hid. Then in his joy, he goes and he sells all that he has and he buys the field. 45 through 46. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls. And on finding one pearl of great value, he went and sold all that he had and bought it. Very similar to the one about the hidden treasure. So 45, let's read it again. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls. On finding one pearl of great value, he went and sold all that he had and bought it. So these parables here about finding things and taking hold of them. So the concrete, relatable, the parables always use concrete, relatable images, universal concepts that everyone can relate to. Treasure, field, merchant, fine pearls. And then this idea of a search. We all understand this idea of the search. And this parable, some folks could look at it from a literal description, but a lot of times this parable is looked at from a metaphorical type of standpoint, talking about the kingdom of heaven and what that must be like, opposed to saying the kingdom of God, because you remember Matthew's writing to this Jewish audience. So there's this joy of discovering something really special. When we discover that thing that's really special, the things that move within us, the excitement that we lay a hold of. So this parable is told in pairs. Maybe Jesus did this to be able to communicate to different audiences. So some people might not be able to grasp the idea, and so he's able to spin it and to retell the story using it a different way, talking about the kingdom of heaven. Instead of just saying this one-size-fits-all story, Jesus has a ability to relate to people from different settings. So in the first century AD, There was a lot of economic and political instability. And it wasn't unusual for someone to bury their treasure in a jar in a field. So Jesus was talking their language. Like, I can get this. I can understand it. And Jesus also uses that same thought with the whole pearl and the treasure. The rabbinic law would state that if you bought a field, then you bought the contents to everything in the field. So to find a treasure in this field or a pearl, Jesus is inviting these listeners on this diligent search to look for something that is relating to the kingdom of God. And then imagine once you find that, you let go of everything that you have to be able to lay hold of that. And that's a lot to think that this story was about letting go of everything just for this pearl, just for this treasure, and to buy this field. So here are some thoughts just to wrestle with. Sometimes people think that it's just about this treasure in the field, is this kingdom of heaven is just relating to Jesus and being aware of Jesus and making Jesus a part of your life. But I think that it's a lot more than that. I think there's a lot more to lay hold of, to grasp what Jesus is talking about. And I wonder what conventional wisdom Jesus in the first century is pushing back on. Where is he trying to use this wisdom that they had and offer this different perspective, this transformational kingdom of God type perspective? And as the first century, what do we hear it from the 21st century perspective as we read these passages in Matthew? How do we hear that today? What are the treasures, the pearls that are around us? And these items in these passages are hidden. Things that they didn't easily see. They had to go on a search. And what if these parables is about how we see the world, how we process the world, and maybe in how we see the world and we process it, the things that are hidden, that we don't see so naturally on the surface. Because it's so easy just to live on the surface, because living on the surface is hard enough. But when we live on the surface, we can allow others to influence and say, this is important and that's important and this is what you need to value. But sometimes the kingdom of God oftentimes pushes back on what we think in the 21st century is valuable and important. As we read the scriptures, maybe it doesn't really add up to think what we value in our culture today is what we really need to hold on to and value and go searching for. And so the writer, the storyteller, Jesus tells us to look for the things that are not obvious. It's almost kind of like when you see an ability and a talent in a person that they don't quite see yet. And you begin, and maybe no one else sees yet, but you just see this ability in one person and you try to encourage and inspire that person to continue to search and to find that talent that's within that person, that potential. And how you want them to see it for themselves and to lay hold of the talent that they might have or the ability. And how exciting it is when they begin to discover it and they begin to believe in themselves and begin to believe in what they're doing and how beautiful that is. And the other uncomfortable thing about this passage, if we think about it, is the person sells everything that they have for he or she to get the treasure, the pearl. And he or she couldn't obtain the treasure without letting go of what they had. So it's humbling to think that them letting go of stuff would allow them to see better, to go on a search and find this. Because they could have seen the pearl, they could have seen the treasure, but they could have said, well, I don't want it because I want to hold on to what I have. And I would have to let go of what I have to get it. But they saw the value of what was there. And maybe here Jesus is pointing to, these hearers then in the first century and today, beyond our conventional wisdom, beyond maybe our cultural hypnosis, to value, to think about what our culture says to value, what's important, and to possibly see beyond that, to see and value the things our culture doesn't value, that are valued within the kingdom of God. And that as followers of Jesus, it allows us to be able to see deeper, to see beyond the conventional wisdom of the day. And it makes us wonder, what do we have to let go of so we can see better? So how do these parables challenge and undermine our ordinary view of reality? What do we need to let go of? What's keeping us from searching and being hungry within our faith to grow as followers of Jesus more? So just go back, read those passages, wrestle with them, read between the lines, and see, look and see what you can find. So, and begin to think about what are the things that are hidden that we don't see, that we might need to begin to see a little bit deeper, see beyond the surface, see beyond what folks around us say, hey, this is important, when we look at it and go, maybe it's really not. So next week is one of my favorite parables. It's the parable of the wedding banquet, and that's from Luke chapter 1. So if you want to get ahead, if you want to go ahead and look at it, then Luke chapter 1, the wedding banquet. So I hope to see you next week, and I hope you have a good night.